Hello, is everyone here? Can everyone hear me? I need to turn my volume up. Everyone's saying hi, this is so great. Okay, we need to see, let's see, we've got a good amount of you guys here. We're waiting on quite a few. Can you guys comment or put in the chat box if you guys can see or hear me? And there's Steph. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Steph. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Can you see everybody? Can you see me? I can see you.
I still can't see you. I don't know why, but I can hear you. So we're good. We're good.
Okay, good. Okay, awesome. I can see and hear you. Had to follow you. Oh, okay, cool. So you guys can see it then. You guys are good? Yes? It should be working. Who cannot see and who can see? Why do I look so red? Steph, do I look like a tomato to you?
I still can't see you. I have no idea.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I can see and hear both of you. Okay, good. Let's see. We are about 30% full, so we're going to wait until we have a few more people on here. And let's see.
Elise says go to YouTube.
Yes, you guys can go to YouTube and it live streams there. It's private for you guys, so if you click that link, it'll take you through. I'm not exactly sure what it looks like for you guys, but you should be able. So we'll just wait for you guys for a few more minutes to figure it out, and then we'll get started. That sounds good. Hey, Steph, if you click up in the right-hand corner where it says rooms, you can see all the info that you'll need to see. And then I'm going to go up. All right. I'm going to get this all started. I literally look like a tomato. So if anyone, can you guys see both of us? Because look at how red I look next to her.
I don't know what I look like. It's like hard to get enough light at night. I don't know how you do this, Jordan. I have lights on and stuff, but I'm like, man, that's tough.
I just use the computer light. I thought about doing the daytime. It's too hard. So
yeah.
All right. Let's see. Okay, everyone can see us for the most part. We've got about a third of the girls here. So we're going to, and they're all going to get to see the playback anyway. So, okay, cool. All right, well, we're going to get started, and then anyone who catches up will be able to catch up, and that's just how it's going to be. So, hold on a second. We need to. All right. Yay, this is so fun.
I'm so excited.
You guys had so much fun planning this for you. Oh my gosh. Okay. And I want to change the way that you guys can see this. I'm not really sure the best way to do that. Okay. Maybe that's the best way. Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, that should work. Does that work for you guys? Yeah. Then I can't see that. So that's kind of a bummer. Sorry, I'm just playing. Hang on. I want to make sure that this is good. Okay. Okay, so guys, today, whatever day it is, we want to talk a little bit about progress and discouragement and kind of what that looks like because, you know, I think, especially if you guys joined on the last meeting, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. You saw when we talked a lot about starting and kind of getting started on that God-sized dream and what that looks like practically and how to do that. And so as Steph and I were planning this meeting, we talked a lot about how, yeah, sometimes we start something, whether that's a blog or a business or a nonprofit or something else, and we hit like a block in the road. It's really exciting when we start. We have a lot of energy, and then after a while, discouragement sometimes likes to take root in our heart. Sometimes the progress seems like it's not really there, like it's really slow, and we get really caught up in popularity and all that. And we want to grow. We want to have attention. We want our work to be noticed. But how do we do that practically and in a way that's effective? So I want you guys, before we get too much into that, I want you guys to meet Stephanie. Steph, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell everyone about yourself. And yeah, just give a little introduction. Tell us what you do.
Ah, yeah, girl. So my name is Stephanie May Wilson, and I am an author, a blogger, and a speaker, and a best friend. And I feel like if you come and hang out in my little corner of the internet, I feel like the best friend part is actually the most important part of all of that. Um, because when I describe, my blog and my little space and the books that I write and stuff, really, it's like a girls' night at your best friend's house. We're just navigating life and doing it together. And so I know that in my life, one of the most impactful things for me was to have like an older sister or a friend who was a couple years ahead of me, or just like sort of a mentor figure who had figured some things out and tripped along the way, on their path in these different areas of life. And like, instead of just kind of continuing on her path, she stopped and turned around and helped me through. And so that's really like my heart for the space that I have here. And so really the things I talk about are like friendship, faith, relationships, and self-confidence. With relationships, we talk a lot about like singleness, and we talk a lot about dating and getting ready for marriage and things like that. But really, yeah, it's just my little corner of the internet. And I feel like really in an ideal world, it would be like everyone just over at my house on my couch, because it's like a girls' night. But yeah, so that's what I do. I wrote a book called The Lipstick Gospel, which is the story of how I met Jesus. The first time I ever saw scripture, it was written on the mirror in my sorority house in like pink loopy lipstick. And so I mean, like I met Jesus in the Sistine Chapel. Like, how does that happen? But anyway, so that's my book, and that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, she's awesome. We love her. And if you guys haven't heard of Stephanie, I would really encourage you to check her out. I feel like we have really similar hearts, really similar visions, but I think the really, really cool thing, and I think Steph, you'd probably agree, is that we've almost like come alongside one another. And it's almost, I mean, I'm sure there's so many aspects of it that could easily become a competition, but I think we've really linked arms. I mean, there's so many times I call her and I'm like, is this happening to you? She's like, yeah, is this happening to you? And we've almost developed like a teamwork with it. And we're loving on you guys and loving on one another in a way that's godly. And I think that's how we truly grow. It's not really just about your numbers or just about how many readers you have or anything like that. It's so much about how can we come alongside one another and do this in community. So that's kind of part of why we wanted to collaborate on this and, introduce you guys to Steph if you don't know her. Introduce you in a very personal way if you have read some of her stuff, and also really empower you guys to come alongside one another. So without further ado, we're going to talk about this, because I feel like we've all been there. So I can't see the chat box right now. Steph, you can see the chat box right now, correct?
Yeah, it looks like, where do they get the link for YouTube?
It should be either emailed to you or it would be right on the page that, like the main page. Does that seem to be a concern?
Yeah, well, people can see the video on YouTube, but not here on Webinar Jam. So someone asked what the link for YouTube was. So if anyone's watching it on YouTube and wants to like post the link, that would be awesome. But I think YouTube is the place. And if you've missed a little bit, like there'll be a replay. So you haven't missed it.
There will be a replay. So if you're confused, you can easily just tune in a little bit. But if you want to be here live with us, we want you to be. So yeah, please just share the link to somebody. This is we actually meeting programs because the other one was giving us a hard time. So it's a little new to us, so I appreciate you guys sticking in there. But yeah, if anyone can share the link, all you need to do is copy paste. And even though it's technically a private link, with anyone with the link should be able to see it. So it should be super easy. Cool? Does that sound good? I can't see the chat box, so I'm going to hope everyone's good with that.
Yeah. People have been posting the links, so I think that they should be good. Y'all, this is hard. This webinar thing, it's like really hard to set up. So thanks so much for your patience.
This is real talk, not easy. Also, Steph, if they have any questions too, since you can access that easier since I'm doing the presentation, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And hop in there. Okay, so this is what we want to talk about. Have you guys felt discouraged, undiscovered, like kind of what you're doing isn't important, or have you felt like quitting? Because I think both Steph and I can agree that we both done that and both felt that way several times. Even just recently, sometimes, we've both gone and done speaking, engagements at different places, and that isn't all that glamorous, and sometimes it's really scary and really hard. And sometimes I think both of us have had experiences where, you kind of have an off day, or you feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't do that well. And there have been times where I'm like, I don't even want to go to the next one. Like I've actually wanted to just not. Steph, would you say that you felt that way too?
Oh, totally. I feel like, speaking is always super scary, but I feel like there have been times where, like I've created something new or I've shared something and like I'm so excited until the moment I press send. And then in that moment, it feels like suddenly I'm like on stage completely naked and just waiting to see if like, I don't know, if people are going to like throw fruit at me or something. I mean, it's like, it's one of the most vulnerable things in the world to do the things that God has for you to do. And it's totally scary. So yes, I feel that like on like a daily basis.
Real talk, you guys, sometimes I'll write something on social media and then I literally will edit it like 20 times. I'm like, wait, that sounds wrong and that sounds wrong. And as silly as that is, I think it's almost that tendency to go, oh, that's not good enough, and you want to be as real and as raw as you can. So like, that's me being really real and raw right now, that, we all second guess ourselves. And a lot of us sometimes feel discouraged or like quitting, or somewhat undiscovered or just kind of irrelevant. We all want to feel relevant. I think relevance kind of in our human minds and in our world equals important, and it equals loved, right? And even though that's not really the case when it comes to a biblical sense of love, it's so easy to interchange those words. So if you felt that way, not alone, clearly. So the 4 things we're really going to dig into today specifically is, one is how to protect yourself against discouragement. And not that you're going to ever be fully immune to discouragement, but what are some practical ways to actually do that when you are trying to pursue your God-given call and the dream on your life and the purpose that you might feel called to. The second one is action steps for making realistic progress. Sometimes I think we want to just skyrocket and make this immense amount of progress immediately, but what are some practical action steps that we can be taking in order to make realistic and godly progress? The next one, the power of one and small beginnings. And Steph's really going to speak into that. She has some awesome wisdom on that. That's really helped me in my journey. And she's spoken into a lot of young girls that way, which I think is awesome. So she's going to talk into that. And then lastly, growth without making it all about me, or making it more about me than it's about God. And I have a lot of girls email me all the time saying, I want to blog, or I want to be a worship leader or something else, but how can I still experience that growth and that progress without making it all about popularity or being obsessed with my numbers? Steph, you were telling me a little bit about how you found yourself just recently, even like on Instagram or social media, feeling like, oh, I'm so popular, oh, people aren't paying attention or something like that. Can you speak into that a smidge?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things that like it goes in waves. So like lately it's been like a pretty, like, I feel like my heart's been in a good place, but like it is like just depending on the day. So because it's really easy when you have sort of like an influx of followers or attention or people reading the things that and we're putting so much hard work into the things that we're doing that when you all of a sudden like get attention for it, it feels amazing. But then like, 10 people unfollow you and you're like, what did I do? I mean, it's so tempting and easy to just kind of ride the wave of approval and then disapproval, is that word? But it's totally tough. And it's like, I think that when you're doing something that is vulnerable, when you're doing something that's close to your heart, and especially when you're doing something that's pretty public and invites other people's like thoughts and feedback and stuff, it's like a daily thing. It's totally a daily thing.
So I know a lot of you guys might struggle with that, or just that pressure to be popular or to be noticed. And so that's one of those points we really want to dig into. So this is kind of the first thing, defeating discouragement. Again, like I said, we're never going to fully just never deal with discouragement again. And I don't want you guys to think that we're just going to give you this little magic solution that you never feel discouraged ever, because that would be a lie and only God can do that. But there's some practical ways to really do that. So Steph, can you speak into this a little bit? This is something that you've really leaned on, and I think it's really wise.
Totally. Hey, are you flipping through the slides?
Yeah, why?
I don't see them. I'm only seeing the first slide.
Oh, weird. Can anyone else see them? Let's do this really quick.
Okay, that helped.
Yeah, you can see them?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, well, then you guys are just going to see this part then.
Seriously, we're just like on the fly.
Weird thing over here, but a little imperfect is fine. So, anyway.
Okay, Holly says now we can. So yeah, we're in the same boat. There was a little photo of me. There's a little photo, whatever. We'll show you guys later.
Okay, well, this is what you guys are going to see, and you can just see the actual random, I don't know how to get rid of this. So we're just going to pretend we're all working on this project together. So basically, this is all you guys missed. Do you guys want to see? Okay. I don't know how to work this thing. Real life struggles. So this is the agenda. That was pretty much it. And now we're here. So you didn't miss much.
Yeah,
sorry about that. Okay. All right. So if you are feeling discouraged or feeling like, I kind of look at it like this. I think our heart is kind of like Sometimes it's like we have soil in our hearts, right? And we can put good things in there and they can take root and grow and flourish. And we can also sometimes have bad things that take root in our hearts. So in this case, sometimes when we feel discouraged, we let that dig a hole, right? And plant itself in our heart, and it literally just like grows there. And before we know it, there's these deep roots. And our discouragement isn't just a feeling that we have every once in a while, but it's actually something that's rooted deeper, and that gets stuck there. So Steph, when you feel discouraged, you told me that you asked this question. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. So this has been kind of my philosophy the whole time that I've been writing. And I'll tell you in a second, but it's one of those things where like, and we'll say this so many times, that this is totally a work in progress. And I mean, I anticipate being like 85 years old and still having these conversations with myself, because it's like, I think that this isn't, I don't know if this is a battle that you like win, like it's a dragon you slay and it's like, it's over. I think that this is one of those things where it's this constant like balancing act where you're just constantly like making sure that your heart's in the right place and you're constantly reminding yourself of truth. So I think it's like this kind of lifelong journey. But and so I say that because I was at a speaking event. I don't remember how long ago. It was like earlier this year. And it was going so well. And the girls who I was there to speak to were so excited to have me. I was so excited to see them. And then all of a sudden, so we're riding in the car together and they start talking about this other blogger and start talking about how great she is. And you guys, I know truth. Like I know it and I could tell you and I could tell anybody else and I could tell myself on most days. But in this moment, like all of a sudden, them talking about how great she is just like hit me in the gut. And all of a sudden I couldn't stop thinking like, she's better at this than I am. She has more to say than I do. She's more popular than I am. She's like, I mean, it was like comparison city, you guys. And really like Jordan was talking about digging a hole. It felt like a hole was dug and like a giant like avocado seed was planted. Like it, and I mean, it took me like a month and a half to dig it out. And so really, I mean, the thing that helped me dig it out and the thing that I've said to myself this whole time and that I would say to anybody is, when we feel like there's not enough room in the world for us, when we feel like the message we have to share is already being said and said better by somebody else. And I mean, really, I think that's a reason why most people don't get started or don't keep going. It just talks us out of it completely. It's like, it's already being done. It's being done better by someone who's better than you. And so your voice is like unnecessary. I think that happens to all of us. And the question that I ask in response is there too much goodness in the world? And I mean, whatever your thing is, like for me, are there too many women in the world who know Jesus or who know their worth or who are in really wonderful, healthy relationships or who have really great friends? Like, is there too much friendship in the world? Like, is there too much Jesus in the world? Does everybody know him? If so, then we're done. And then like Jesus come back, we're going home. Like it's over. But I mean, really, until then, there is still so much work to be done. And there's so many people that need encouragement and that need help and that need whatever the thing is that you can give them. Like there's just so much need and there's always need. And even if you and someone else are writing in the exact same way or creating the same kind of business or like, you know, even if two people really overlap, there's still room. And I mean, for example, Jordan and I have really like similar hearts. And a lot of our girls are like y'all are really similar to the girls who read my blog. And a lot, like some of you might be the same. But really, just because you read Jordan's blog doesn't mean that you also might not like Jordan can't give you all the encouragement and inspiration you're ever going to need, you know, and neither can I, and neither can other people. And so really, even if there's a ton of overlap between you and someone else, like just in like one, there's not too much goodness in the world. We are not over loved or over encouraged or over inspired or over taught. You know, we're just not. And really just because you're getting something wonderful from someone doesn't mean you don't also want to get it from someone else. You know, there's just, no matter what, there's just never too much goodness in the world. And the way that your story, your specific unique story, or the specific thing you have to give in your specific way will resonate with a specific group of people that may not resonate with other people's style or whatever. So that's the question that I ask myself all the time, is just like, when I'm feeling like there's just no place for me and it's already being done and it's already being done better than I can do it, I just keep asking myself, like, is there too much goodness in the world? Does every woman in the world know who God is and know how much he loves her and know what she's worth? Does every girl have wonderful relationships, wonderful friendships, and a wonderful relationship with herself? If not, like, I need to get to work. And so do you, you know? So that's, I mean, really, like, that's the thing that's the thing that dug that avocado pit out of my heart, and has been honestly for years. I just have to keep reminding myself of that.
Yeah, and you guys, I want to piggyback off that just a little bit, which was awesome. How cool is Stephanie? First of all, she's amazing. Literally love her. But going off of that, there is never too much goodness in the world, but I think it's good in the sense that, like Steph said, there is so much overlap in some ways, but there's also so many differences, right? And I think that's really, really cool. I think sometimes we almost and we chatted about this once, is it's so easy to look at what someone else is doing and say, I want to do that, or I want to be like, how do I do what you do? But if it's how do I do what you do, what we're really saying is, well, how can I do exactly what you're doing because it looks cool, instead of how can I pursue my unique purpose? And if it kind of mirrors what you're doing, awesome, let's come alongside one another. But so quickly it turns into, oh, that's already being done. Steph or I could have looked at the other and gone, oh, that's already being done, I might as well quit. And taken this avocado seed and just shoved it deeper, right? And just let it be. And what would that really accomplish? One, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. Two, Lipstick Gospel wouldn't exist. Three, I wouldn't have a blog. There's just so many things and we would not be united as sisters, right? Because our work is ultimately about community and bringing others into the circle. And I think sometimes we've probably all had experiences where we're in a group, or we've been wanted to be invited into a group, and the circle is just so big and so beautiful, and we want to be a part of that, but there's no more room, right? And they kind of close it off, and their linked arms real tight, and we're sitting on the outside like, hi, right? And that's really that's not inviting. And so when we're pursuing kingdom work, and when we're pursuing our God-given purposes, and when we're blogging or whatever we're doing, if we don't look at that, we got to make more room in the circle. Even if it looks like she does something similar to me, or if it feels oversaturated, there's always more room in the circle, because that's what the kingdom is, right? So, okay, moving on, because I could just go on rant with this. So I think we both good. Okay, I don't know how to move to the next one. I'm just really not good at this. Who was the person who knew how to work? I'm just gonna do this. I don't know. What am I doing? I need to learn this better before. Who knows how to move to the next one? Anybody? No? This is this weird, not, it's not a good.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, there we go. That's how we're going to do it then. Okay, so now we want to talk about the action steps for realistic progress. How can we do it? I'm hitting the arrows. It doesn't work. Okay, anyway. So action steps for realistic progress. How can we make progress that makes sense, that we can keep up with, but that also is progress and it isn't just stagnant? Guys, don't you hear that? I'm literally hitting the arrows right now. Oh God, this is so frustrating. Oh, okay, this is just what we're gonna do until I figure out this weird program. It's fine. Okay. So these are the 5 kind of action steps that Steph and I put together that we talked a lot about. And so she's going to speak into a couple. I'm going to speak into a couple, explain them a little bit more. I would highly suggest writing these down because they've been really crucial to my growth as a writer, as a speaker, as a human being. And so I think it's also been that way for Steph. So Steph, do you want to talk about the first one?
Totally. So I feel like really, and I know that y'all talked last time about how to get started, but this is sort of I don't know, I think 2.0, you're getting started and you're doing the work and you're, if we're talking about blogging specifically, you've created a blog and you're starting to write, this is 2.0, and that is know the need you're serving. And this is important because I think for a lot of people for a long time, they're, they're doing a couple things. One, they're writing because it's fun. And that's amazing. If you want to write for yourself, you guys, I've been keeping journals since I was in 6th grade. I love writing for myself. But blogging, and so I did that for when I was blogging for a while too, just kind of doing it because it was fun for me and because I enjoyed it. But really things really changed when I started thinking about other people, in addition to my own passions. When I started to realize that the women that were reading my blog were asking me questions and really needing help with some things, and they were things that I could really help them with. And it's kind of a process of discovery, figuring out who your audience is and what they need from you. But it's totally an amazing journey to go on, and a really necessary one, because we we're kind of shooting in the dark until we figure out exactly who we're speaking to and what we can help them with. Jordan was telling me earlier that when she writes, there's like a specific girl in mind that she's serving, and she is asking, what does she need today? How can I serve her? How can I love her? What does she need a blog post on? And when we can really pinpoint like who it is we're speaking to and what they need, amazing things begin to happen, because we're really helping people in the areas of their lives that they need help with. And so this is like, it's definitely a process. And I feel like this is something I've been thinking about and discovering for a long time. And more, the longer that I've been writing, the more I realize who I am and what I have to offer and who my people are. And so it's kind of I think it's a lifelong process of just kind of discovering who you are and what you have to offer. But it's really an amazing one to go on. And when your passion can meet the need of someone else, like amazing things happen. And Alana asked a question that I think is really awesome about this. She said, how do you discover where your heart is for people, like which audience you want to minister to? And there are a couple of questions that I really think of when I think of this question. So one of them is like, what breaks your heart? Like what, when you think of different things that are going on in the world or in your world, like what things really like sting you or who do you ache for? So that's like one thing is kind of who do you hurt for? And because we all kind of hurt for different people. And so when we can kind of think of who those people are, we can there's God speaking to us in that. Another thing is, what have you been through? God uses our stories tremendously. I totally believe that this is part of his redemption process for us. And the way that he takes our messy, broken, like messed up stories and transforms them into something beautiful is that he uses them. And I know for me, looking back and seeing where I've been, the girls who are on the path just a few steps behind me, those are my girls. And the things they're going through, the things that I've been through, and so I know how to get through, those are my things. Those are the things I can help them with. And so I would definitely ask yourself, like, what do you hurt for? Like what kind of things like break your heart or make you like want to rise up and make a change? And then what things have you been through? Because chances are the things that you've been through are the things that God is going to has already and is continuing to equip you to turn around and like help somebody else with. So know the need you're serving. That's definitely the first one.
Yeah, and that's an awesome way to put it. And kind of like she touched on, every time I write and every time I speak and say something, I remember a certain encounter that I had with someone that I felt like really represented my heart. And so that's the girl I'm writing to. I remember what she looked like. I remember what her hair looked like, what she was wearing. I remember how she smelled, how she talked, it was so specific, because sometimes we like to generalize things, and that's not bad. I know that the majority of my audience is young women, 16 to 32 years old, usually 18 to 24, if I want to be really specific, and that's great. That works on, that's a words are hard, guys. Statistical thing. And I know that that's a statistical thing, but you guys aren't statistics. You guys are friends. You guys are my girls. And just like Steph said, it's a friendship thing. And so understanding if I can put that person across the table from me at coffee and just look at it like a conversation with each and every one of you and understand that, I relate to you and I get you, then I think that's so much more powerful. So the way that you said that stuff with, what breaks your heart, that was really what fueled everything behind what I do now. And I think a lot of what fuels what you do. So anyway, I'm going to move on to the next thing that kind of piggybacks off of it, is understanding the 5 things that people want and need, regardless of what niche you're in. If you're interested in blogging, or you're interested in starting a business, or you're interested in ministry or whatever, kind of regardless, it's kind of across the board, the 5 things that humans, and especially women, but humans in general, want and need. And I've actually written a little PDF thing on this that I've released here and there, but I want to go over them. So first one is authenticity. And, that doesn't mean being vulgar or being over the top or anything, but it means just being authentically honest and being a little bit vulnerable. And that can be refined, but it is so key, because there's so many advertisements, there's so much business in the world, there's so, like we talked about, it's almost oversaturated. And so understanding, how can my audience relate to me? I have to be authentically and unapologetically who I am. I'm not going to ever try to be just like Stephanie, and I hope Stephanie never tries to be just like me, because we have unique stories and we have unique personalities, and we have, really kind of I guess, still authentic purposes. And if we leave that authentic purpose to try to look like something else, it's not going to work. And so people and readers and those that we're serving also crave that authenticity. So that would be the first one. Someone just asked, are we going to be able to watch this later? Yes, this will be available later, and it'll be really easy for you to watch. I think it'll be emailed to you as well, if I'm understanding correctly. So secondly, authenticity and then encouragement. We all need encouragement. We all need upbuilding, right? Scripture talks about the importance of building up others. And so when we are serving our audience, even if I was telling Steph, even if it's, a chicken noodle soup recipe and you are a fitness writer, or maybe, you sing in a choir or whatever you do, understand that those around you and those who you're serving need to be encouraged. That can be very simply, that can be with words, that can be with actions, whatever that looks like in your specific work. But if we aren't being intentional about encouraging, then are we really meeting any of their needs? Because we all need encouragement, right? And that doesn't need to be cheesy, it doesn't have to be a really cheesy thing, but it needs to be authentic and encouraging. And second and thirdly, we need truth, right? Every single person on this planet, like Steph said earlier, does everyone know Jesus? Does everyone, know truth? Does everyone know the gospel? And the answer is just no. And so whoever we're serving, if we're not clinging to truth and letting that fuel all that we're doing, it's not even really that authentic, and it's not true encouragement, right? It's not godly encouragement. So it doesn't have to be over the top. It can be very just natural to what we do. But if we're not grounding everything that we're doing and also sharing truth, then we're missing something really, really key. Fourth, relatability. I just say it kind of like this. I can't relate to someone that I can't relate to, right? And that doesn't mean that that person isn't good or isn't doing a good job, but I probably won't relate very easily to a 60-year-old man. Now, there's certain things I might relate to, but I relate to somebody like Stephanie or, someone like you guys probably a lot more because we've walked through some similar things in life. And also we're open and honest enough to talk about that, right? When Stephanie and I are working on something or a launch or a project or a new piece and we need feedback about it, that's helpful when it comes to work. But then when we're serving our audience, we also need to be just as raw and real and authentic with them, because that makes us more relatable. Because if we're not relatable, who's really going to understand and listen and relate to it, right? So that's really, really key. Even in Paul, when he was doing his ministry, he identified with the people that he was talking to. Jesus hung out with them. He didn't just do everything like them, but he related to them, and he said, look, I understand you, and I'm going to love you through that. So I think that's so much a part of our mission as well. And then lastly, we need to give people a takeaway. So if you are a writer or whatever project or work you're doing, you have to give them something that they can cling to, right? Whether, like, I look at that like sticky statements, something that people can remember, and it sits easily in their mind, whether that's a play on words and that really kind of summarizes the whole message, or something like that. And so when it comes to our work, if we're not giving someone a takeaway, we're just spewing information at them, but it's not concise and something they can go, okay, here's what I took away from, this project or this course or this piece or blog post, then as much as it's encouraging and as much as it might be relatable, they might forget it, or it might not actually take root in their heart, right? Remember I talked about we plant things in our heart. Sometimes discouragement can get planted there, and truth can also get planted there. And so if we give them a very clear and concise takeaway after they see all of our work or hear our work or read our work, then that is where it's really powerful, because that sticks in mind and in heart. Make sense? Yeah? Okay. Steph, you want to talk about 3, or do you want me to talk about 3? I'll talk about it. I know
we talk about 3. We talk about 3.
That really goes kind of hand in hand with the relatability, authenticity, encouragement, truth, and takeaway, because being personal with our work doesn't mean saying, here's all my problems, and here I'm just going to be so vulnerable that, it's almost like obnoxious. But being personal with our work invites others in. Like I talked about with that circle, it invites others in, and it says, look, I'm going to let you into my world, because who really relates to this, organization or this thing that they can't really grab onto personally. Now, your work might be different than ours. Ours is very personal, but still can remember that every single person you're serving, whether you have 5 or 5,000, and that's the question, if there's 5 or 5,000, will you still serve him? And regardless of the number, you should remember each one of those people have a soul, and each one of those people you're going to meet on the other side of heaven. So are you serving them personally and as if that they are one-on-one with you, or are you serving them like they're the masses that make you popular or that could make you popular? You have to attend to that, to that individual heart, even if there's 500 people listening or if there's 5. So remember,
girl, that's so good.
It's true. And I think, Steph, I think you can totally agree to that. There's so much power in personal. And it's not, there's not really a lot of power in performance, you guys. Performance can be entertaining for a little while, and it might be something that people grab onto for a little bit, but if there's no personal connection, they're going to move on to the next entertainer. They're going to move on to the next thing that grabs their attention. And so how can you create relationships with people that you don't even really know? You know, I don't know each one of you personally. I would love to. We can hang out. That'd be awesome. But the best way for me to establish somewhat of a relationship with you guys in an authentic way to actually accomplish the mission God's given me is to create community and to be personal. So yeah, that's 2 and 3. Steph, I know you want to talk about 4, so I'm going to give it over to you really quick.
Yeah, girl. So with show up and keep showing up, because we're talking about like tangible action items. Like, so you've started whatever you're starting. How do you grow this thing? And I think that that's like a lot of times when we're doing anything, especially if it's creative and personal like this, or like a dream of ours, it is really easy to look at other people and feel unseen, or to feel like you're spinning your wheels and not making a ton of progress. And really, so this is my favorite thing to talk about when it comes to how to grow something, or how to be more successful at something, to have something start gaining traction and like kind of the snowball like rolling down the hill, you know, it's just growing and growing and growing. So it's to show up and keep showing up. And so this is really more applicable if you are starting an online shop, or if you are trying to, you know, do something on Instagram or social media, or if you're like starting a blog or a community, or writing a book or something like that. But I think of it like, picture like a band playing on a street corner, okay? So they're there and they have just a song in their heart and they just need to play, and they want people to hear and be encouraged and inspired by their music. And so they show up one day and they're playing, and they're just playing their heart out. And some people come by and stop and start to listen, and they really appreciate their music. And the band says, hey, you know what? We'll be back tomorrow. And the other people say, okay, great. Like, they'll be back tomorrow. So the next day the band shows up again and they're playing their heart out, and those same people come back because they wanted to hear them again. And this time they brought a couple of friends, and that keeps happening, and it keeps growing and growing, and the audience keeps growing. But it's so important that the band keeps showing up consistently, because if they stop showing up, if say on the 3rd day, this group started to form and people were bringing back their friends, and all of a sudden the band just didn't show up, the people would have shown up and said like, oh, are they not here? Are they coming back? I don't know. And then maybe the next day the people would try again, but if the band still wasn't there, at some point they would kind of give up. And so really the thing is that I know that, I mean, there are absolutely like things that are helpful in terms of growing something into something that's big and sizable and making a difference. But there's nothing more powerful than showing up and doing the thing that God has placed on your heart, and inviting the people you know to come. And if people are resonating with you, if you're doing those things that Jordan listed, then they'll start inviting their friends, and their friends will start inviting their friends, and their friends will start inviting their friends. And so like anything else you do, if you're not showing up consistently and doing the thing and doing good work and encouraging and inspiring people, like nothing else will work. And so showing up and keep showing up. And I can't remember if we were going to talk about this later. If we do, you'll get to hear it twice. But stewarding those relationships, really doing exactly what Jordan said, and treating people well, like treating people like people. And really, I mean, I think that's absolutely how my blog and my little corner of the internet grew, is because I just had something to say, and I showed up, and I kept showing up, and people kept inviting more and more friends. And in the process, I just tried to treat my first readers, and I still try to treat all of my readers, but it's like my thought the whole time has been, treat your readers like gold. Just treat them like gold. Steward those relationships. Be a great friend to them. And when you do that and you do it consistently for a while, like more and more people will show up and invite their friends. So I think about that all the time.
Awesome. Before I move on to the next one, which you guys can obviously already see there, but we'll dig into it a little bit. We have a couple questions that I want to answer. Someone asked about being a worship leader and how that personal piece fits into it. And I really think that that's a great question, because I think there are certain things like, for example, you know, being a worship leader or other things like that maybe not feel so personal. But you have to remember that they are personal, because the people that are listening are still people. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to, break out in the middle of a song with like a quick little like, hey guys, how's it going kind of thing. But I mean, you could, I guess that's sort of to you, that could be your style. But, you can keep that personal by being intentional about saying, okay, when I'm writing lyrics or when I'm singing, and if I feel something, like if I feel like the Lord needs to say something, I choose not to hold that back. And I choose to speak into the heart and to the lives of those who are listening, because it's just like writing. It's different, but it's not, because you still have people that are consuming what you are saying. You are still a mouthpiece for the Lord. And so if you're not looking at it in that light, then you have to almost take yourself off the stage. It's so easy when we are performing or speaking or writing, or we have this corner of the internet or whatever it is, and to put ourselves almost on this pedestal. But in doing so, we take the king off his throne. And so you can keep it incredibly personal, even through music. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're writing this big blog post on someone's specific problem, but your music can speak into that problem. A lot of times music is healing. Music is something that helps us move on. And it's what we listen to when we're struggling with something. I don't always run to a blog or a book when I'm struggling. Sometimes I just want to listen to music that gets me and that says, yes, girl, I've been there too. I understand. I've been heartbroken. I've lost someone I loved. I've been stressed out, and even though that's not exactly what they say in the lyrics, it's the lyrics that basically say, you're not alone. And so that's kind of the heart behind music anyway, isn't it? For at least good music, right? It's to help through healing and to meet people where they are. And so just remember that through your music, you can still meet people where they are.
I love what Lacey said too. Lacey's talking about her worship leader at church, and how her worship leader has just really invested in people and has gotten to know people and like asked questions about their lives. And I think that just like being a pastor, a worship leader is someone that people look to and like is totally a leader in the church. And like Lacey said that since her worship leader came to their church, their choir has grown from 20 to 50 people. And so people are looking to you as a worship leader and want to follow you as you seek the Lord. And like I just think of when Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. People are following you. And so being real about your struggles when you're having a hard time, and so you can be real when Jesus shows up and meets you where you are. And I think that this is not only I feel like it's like friendship advice. It's not just about like a blog, it's about friendship. And with Abby too, like Abby, you said that your dreams to become a photographer and it's your goal in life. It's the same thing, because if you're going to want to invite people into your photography and want to invite clients in, it's being really good to your first client. And it's when you show up on Instagram, putting out, showing up again and again and capturing people's stories and telling people's stories and meeting people in their stories and being vulnerable with your story. And I mean, it's all connection, Yeah.
And I think if you think about it, photography is actually a really neat kind of art. I've done it for a while. And it's an opportunity not only to capture someone's story, but to listen to it and to ask questions. And one of the best ways to share the gospel is you have to first know someone's story, right? It's more effective to say, I know I know your pain points, or I know the joys in your life, and I get to actually step into those and share those. Maybe maybe you're a wedding photographer, or maybe you're a newborn photographer, or maybe you're a family photographer, but whatever that is, you actually step into someone's circle very up close and personal. And so if you can love on those people well, and you can ask questions and get to know their story, and be willing to, even like I said, keep your public platforms personal. Meaning, that doesn't mean you keep them all private, but what I mean is if you're sharing someone's photo on Instagram, or you're sharing a photo of a family or whatever you're doing, and you can share a unique piece of their story or a way that they inspired you, one, that shows that, one, I was listening and I care about your story, and two, I think it matters in the world, so I'm willing to share a piece of that. And so you can still apply so many of these things, understanding that your clients, or those people listening to your music or whatever you're doing, they still need authenticity, truth, encouragement, relatability, and something to take away, right? You're giving them a product, you're giving them a final piece of art. And if that's done well and that's done in love, they're going to know that. That is undeniable. My wedding photographer was incredible in the sense that he stepped up and he carried my bouquet around when I needed him to. And he almost acted as if he was an extra bridesmaid. It was awesome. And then he pinned on Matt's boutonniere, and he did all his little extra things to be so integrally part of the day, not just to stand back and to take pictures, but to actually step into and say, I'm invested in this. I'm invested in this with you. I'm invested in this day. You are the only person on my mind. I'm not thinking of my other clients. And that is so key. So that's a really easy and tangible but personal way to still steward and disciple and love on your clients, because that's going to open the door for conversation. And that is going to make your reviews and everything off the charts, because you're going to stand out, right? You're going to stand out as a person who's not just this person snapping pictures from afar, but someone who steps into my story, steps into my circle, and becomes a friend. And so be intentional about doing that. And Marissa also asked about incorporating writing posts ahead of time. Steph, what do you think of writing posts or creating content ahead of time? Do you find that helpful, or do you kind of steer away from it?
So I would find it helpful if I did it more often, and I wish I did. Marissa, I totally get you. Reading your comment, I'm like, "Ooh, girl, amen, me too." I think that it's really everyone's like rhythm and flow of writing is different. And I know for me, the closer I get to a deadline, the more pressure I feel, and the harder it is for me to get words out. So ideally, I would have posts scheduled like way in advance. I just like have other things going on, which I know you do too. And so it's really hard to do that. But really, I think that it's try a couple different things. See if, for me, I think if I had my posts done a week in advance, that would be really, really helpful for me and just would take some of the pressure off. So I could just kind of like let my heart out and not like let my heart out. It's, I don't know. It just becomes like really pressure filled when it's kind of the last minute. And so I think that getting behind on writing, if you want to like take a couple weeks and really get some posts kind of stored up so that you can have some for a while, or and when it comes to your ideas for blog posts, I think like it takes practice, but cultivating attention, starting to really pay attention. And when something strikes you, making sure you write it down and have a place where you write it down. So I have this notes, or I have like a list in my reminders on my iPhone. And I just write down if something like comes to mind, I go, oh, yes, that, like that. And I'll write it down. Or if I have a minute, I'll like kind of brain dump some of the blog posts so that I can go back later when I have some more time and like go back and really add to it and make it into something that's, coherent. But really, I mean, I think that whether you're kind of more of an in the moment person or whether you need to have it done in advance, it really is a discipline of like, I will post a blog post this week. It will happen. And it's because I'm going to force it to happen. And if it's the night before, like I'm going to get it done, because it is a discipline and it is something that gets easier the more you practice. And so when I first started writing, I cannot believe this because I could never do this now. I was posting 3 times a week, every week for like years. Lord even knows how I did that. I have no idea. But it really, I was in the rhythm and I was in the habit, and I had like, I don't know. I think it's when you're, it's like a river, water flows out and then water flows back in, and water flows out and water flows back in. And so I think that it's just practice, but it's tough. So just figure out whatever works for you. If it's like, I want to write for 30 minutes every morning, like set your alarm a little earlier, or I want to store up some blog posts so that I'm not feeling the pressure because I have some like runway, do that too. But it really is kind of a discipline. And unfortunately, there's no like snap easy way to make it easier. It's practice.
I'll speak into that really quick because I know we need to move on. But one thing that I actually found myself doing is, I get a lot of emails and messages and things like that I love and I try to get back to, but I also know some of them are so relatable to so many people. And so what I find is I will literally copy paste a question or a specific thing that seems to be a recurring theme, and I make that a blog title, and sometimes I'll change it, as I write it. But what I have in my pending drafts right now is like 17 blog posts, which I haven't completed or published. But what it is it's a prompt. Ultimately, we all need prompts. How much easier is it to write when you're not feeling like you're pulling something out of thin air, but you're actually saying, here's a need I'm meeting. So I look at these as 17 different needs that are reoccurring questions that I'm going to speak into and continue to pray through and cultivate. And I put in the thoughts, and I know that those are pending. So as I go through my days and as God teaches me things, as a person and as a writer, I can cultivate those, pull them, and create and produce a solid answer that a lot can relate to. And that's not always saying I have it figured out, but at least it's something that can speak into that need. So it's a lot about meeting the felt need and understanding what that is. And sometimes just putting it in the pending drawer and going, okay, I know that that's a prompt I have to get to, right? So that's a really easy way to do that too. And it kind of helps because the scheduling thing I've never done. I feel like it can be somewhat impersonal, even though it's great. Sometimes I'm like, what if I'm just writing this to have content up, but it's not actually meeting a need or answering a question? So that's something I've wrestled with personally. So that might be a good solution for you.
Jordan, I've started doing the exact same thing, and it has been so helpful. And so then, like, if you, like, that gosh, let me think. I got an email yesterday from a girl who's really struggling with shame about her past and things she's done in her past. And so I totally want to write a blog post about that. So I wrote her back, but I know like, okay, I need to write about that. And the way that I think that like, because I totally agree with you, it can feel impersonal, Jordan, but like for me, like the stories that I'm going to tell her, like I have those stories, and so whether I actually share it today or, in a month or something, it's still like a need that I know, gosh, all of us have. So I think that like when we are really in tune with the people who are reading, even if it's two people, what are people asking you about? And starting to respond to those things. And, next time a girlfriend asks you for advice about something, like there's a blog post, like write that down. I love that. I love that you do that.
Absolutely. Okay, guys. Still don't know how to work this thing, so this is how we're gonna do it. It's so sad, but whatever. Okay, so Steph, kind of going off that, you talked a lot about the power of one. So this is kind of the aspect of progress and growth and small beginnings. Because I know sometimes we look at someone else that has this seemingly large following, and it's this big cool thing, and that's great. But that's not really helping us make progress, right? So what is the power of one, and what does that really look like? So Steph's gonna speak on the first point, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the second one. So go.
Okay. So I've heard a lot of people speak about this, but I heard this story one time. Jen Hatmaker, who I don't know if you guys know her, she's an amazing writer. She's absolutely hilarious. But she is, really successful, really well known. And she was talking about a conversation with a girlfriend of hers. And so her girlfriend was introducing her to someone. She's saying, "Oh, this is my friend Jen. She's a writer. She's written 3 books." And Jen was like, I had to stop her and say, I've written 11 books. I've written 11 books. And her friend, her really, really, really good friend, had only heard of 3 of her books, which is just crazy. It means that there are all these books that Jen has written that have, one, like built a foundation for the 3 that people really know about, but also that she's been at this for a long time. And the truth is that there's no such thing as an overnight success. And it's actually like, for as much as we kind of wish we would just do something and it would explode, I think that it's really in like God's grace to us that things develop slowly, and that when you start a blog, you have one reader and it's probably your mom. And then like your dad realizes, oh, they have a blog, and then your dad gets on board, and it like slowly grows. But the beauty of that is that you have so much time to practice. And so by the time you get to book, 9, 10, and 11, you really have like figured out your voice, and you figured out your message, and you've practiced. It's like, if you think of like the biggest stage you could ever imagine speaking on, like a giant conference or something, like if you were, if you'd never spoken before and someone put you on that stage, you would be so scared and you'd have no idea what you're doing, and you would totally blow it because you're not ready for that kind of stage yet. Like I wouldn't be either. And so really it's like the practice in between. It's the tiny stage where one person's listening, and then 4 people are listening, and then 10 people are listening, and then 80 people are listening, and 800 people, it grows with our skill. And so God really gives us this amazing gift of small beginnings, of really growing slowly. And by the time a lot of people are paying attention, we're ready for a lot of people to pay attention. And so that just really has stuck with me that, and I totally remember like my first blog posts were terrible. You can still read them. They're like way back in the archives of my blog. But I mean, they weren't good. And I also had no idea what I was trying to say. And by the time more people were listening, I really knew more of who I was, and I really had found more of a rhythm, and I had found more of my voice, and I had learned more. And so I really think like the power of small beginnings is just amazing. And like God gives us so much time and like runway to practice and grow before a ton of people are paying attention. And also, Jordan and I were really talking about the parable of the talents, and I just love it. But Jesus says like, whoever will be faithful with a little, like to him, much more will be given. Like he'll be entrusted with a lot. And so when we're really faithful with a little bit, like I always think about that. That's something God and I talk about all the time, is I say, God, help me be faithful with my girls. And I have way more girls than I did 5 years ago. But still, like, God, help me be really, really faithful with these girls, because I know you've entrusted them. You've entrusted them to me. But I always think about Jen Hatmaker and that. I'm like, man, she's written 11 books and nobody knew. Like she was an overnight success, but she wasn't an overnight success. She's been practicing for a long time. And we have that gift too, because really like along the way, we just get so much better.
And that kind of goes right hand in hand with the power of one too, because it's a small beginning is one person. And then it's 3 people, right? And it's kind of just like, I'm going to go back and forth here on slides. And also we forgot to hit number 5 over here, but we'll get there. Thinking about Jesus' ministry, how did Jesus do ministry on earth? Sure, he attended to the masses, but he really invested in a small group of men, if you really think about it. And he poured into Peter and James and John. And then those people then poured into 2 more people. And then those 2 poured in. And so if we're ultimately having like kingdom mentality, it's great if people read our stuff but sometimes we get so caught up in the move through me, God, work through me, inspire people through me. That's great. But we have to be so okay with him going, yeah, but what if I want to work through him today? Or what if I want to work through stuff more than you today? And until we're like okay with that, then we're really not in a place of maturity and spiritual maturity to understand that, okay, this really isn't, just about me. And it starts with one person. And it also starts with an audience of one. So it's a power of one, meaning reaching one person, but who are we ultimately writing for or ultimately singing for or doing photography for? It's an audience of one, right? It's of God. And so capital O, audience of one. And that's one thing my husband always says with football. He's kind of on stage too, is always feeling like he has to perform and go to these workouts and all this kind of stuff. And if we're overseeing the one and the value of one and, the opportunity for spiritual multiplication, if we pour into one who can then have their life, changed or impacted, who can then impact another, we're reaching so many more people than we ever really knew. Because we can't serve 1,000 people individually, but if we could serve 2 people individually or 1 person individually, eventually that's going to reach 1,000, right? So that's kind of the beauty of these small beginnings and understanding it's not a period of pressure to, blow up and be this overnight success, but it's actually a period of practice and it's a period to refine your skills. And so you have to use those small beginnings, that small audience, that lack of attention that almost sometimes likes to just discourage us and squish us to actually get better at what you're doing. Otherwise, who wants a big stage? And not that you're ever going to be perfect at what you're doing, but who wants a big stage feeling like they're not prepared for that? There's so much beauty in preparation, but also leaving room for God to step in. Lastly, I want to get back to this really quick because this actually goes into the small beginnings and the power of one. The last point of this action step for realistic progress is the importance of having community around you, the importance of having mentors and accountability partners to push you. Because when you're stuck on one and you feel like you've been serving one person for 6 months and you're like, will the second ever come, or whatever that is, it's really easy to want to give up. And I'm sure you guys know that with whatever you're doing. Stephanie's walked through that. I've walked through that. Probably everyone who looks like an overnight success has walked through that because there's so much trial and error that goes into any kind of work that we step into. Even just normal employment, you guys, like anything, can feel like it's just so meaningless or so insignificant. And we live there and we let ourselves live there. And that's almost so destructive to the point where it's like, well, who's going to come alongside of us then and say, hey, have you been doing whatever you committed to doing? Hey, have you allowed yourself to rest? I'm an overworker. Like I give 150,000% all the time, which can be a good trait and can also be a really not good trait. And so I have actually had to have people and accountability partners that I say, hey, hurt my feelings. Meaning I give you permission to step in and to intercede and to say, hey, this is not what you promised to do. So I'm purposely giving myself 4 months off in the summer from traveling and everything because I know that I'm the kind of person where I would say, okay, I will go. God, you send me, I will go. But ultimately, if I'm not allowing myself to be refreshed and inspired, then what difference can I really make too? And so it's understanding and knowing your limits and having those people in place and that you trust to speak truth into you. And once you get into ministry, you guys, you have to be intentional and very careful with who you allow to speak truth into you, right? Or once you get into your businesses or whatever it might be, you have to have a trusted circle because if you start having any type of success, you bet your bottom dollar that people are going to want to have a piece of the pie and they're going to want to stick their nose in your business and just give you what they think you should be doing and just tell you like it is. And they will come and they can really defeat you. Like I've experienced that. I know a lot of people have experienced that. And so it's really being a little bit guarded, but also knowing who am I allowing that's wise and that's been there before, watched some of this path before me, and that knows my heart and that knows what God's trying to accomplish through me, or that's seen what, my that in a way that's loving, but also full of truth. Because sometimes we need to be spoken truth to in love, right? So that's something I've kind of learned through this journey is having those people in place that know that. So, okay. So as we're talking about, okay, this is a slow growth and this is, this is a process and you're going to have, times that don't seem like it's doing anything. Yeah, okay, we know that, right? But I know so many of you are sitting there like, okay, yeah, but I still want to grow. Like that doesn't change the desire to still have people care what I do. And I get that. Stephanie gets that. So now we want to talk a little bit about the godly growth and what that can look like and how we can do that intentionally and build an authentic audience, but also not be so obsessed with it. So that's some really random goofy chart that we have. And then, so this is ultimately the question, right? How can I grow a blog, business, ministry, personal endeavor, whatever it is, without obsessing over the numbers? Because we all know that the numbers matter and we don't need to be in denial of that. And Stephanie, you gave the example of a church, right? I would like you to just share that a little bit because it was so spot on and it's so good. And I think it really speaks into everything that we desire and things that can come from a good desire that can come from a good place that can get kind of, just kind of muddled in the process.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think that we think that as Christians, and I get this question all the time too, like, how do you grow a blog without like caring too much about the numbers? Because if you're caring about the numbers, then you're caring about having attention. And if you're caring about attention, then it's not about Jesus, it's about you. So like, how in the world do you do that? And I do think, and like Jordan and I'll keep talking about this. I mean, really, we'll talk about this for the rest of our time together, that it's tough and it's imperfect. And it really is a balancing act. I don't think it's one of those things that you just defeat. I think it's like a thorn in the side of doing work like this. Is your heart wants to, it's our flesh. It wants to not be in a good place about this. It wants to make it about us. But also we can really talk about the numbers like they're this, like they're the enemy, and they're really not. I feel like numbers, when you think about it like a church, like when you want people to come to church, because more people that come to church, the more people are hearing about Jesus. And if you're making the church about like fame and notoriety or like how much money can we squeeze out of these people or something, then it gets to be an ugly thing. But really, you want your church to grow because one, that's an indication of how healthy your church is as a body. If it's a place where people want to be, they'll invite more people. And so that gives you a good indication of like, okay, I'm on the right track. But also like more people showing up at church means more people are knowing about Jesus. And so numbers, I think, are a good metric to help us know if we're on the right track, if we're doing something that's resonating with people. So yeah, I think that's always what I think of is it is a good metric. Like churches know that the way that they're talking about Jesus, the way that they're doing community, the way that they're the atmosphere that they're creating is inviting and warm and is helping people meet Jesus if more people are coming. And if that's not happening, then you can kind of rework it and try something different. But I think that numbers, oh my gosh, absolutely can be the kind of thing where it's like, and that it's never enough. And you're trying, and it feels like affirmation and validation. And it feels like, we can kind of like gobble it up trying to fill this hole in our hearts. And we know that doesn't work, but we can't alienate them either because they are a really like powerful and effective metric to say, hey, like, yes, you're doing the right thing. Like, keep going. This is working, Yeah.
And I'm going to just touch on that too, because, like she said, the numbers are important. It's like you can't have a body without having people there, right? Like it's people are important, and we don't want to overlook that and say, well, but you just don't want to turn people into a number. So creating a community, bringing people in is so key, but turning them into a number is where it gets hard. And so how can we avoid that? And one thing that we talked a lot about, Steph and I, in the last couple of days, was progress over popularity. And she was sharing a little bit about just when it comes to terms of business, think about it just as a business thing, okay? So it is very, very possible and very common to have a profitable business without having a ton of people know about it, right? If you are putting the right strategies in place and you're being intentional about stewarding the small clientele that you have, you don't have to be Miss Popular to support yourself or to have a profitable business. But that's where the internet gets really confusing, because that's where, when someone has a lot of popularity, it looks like they're making a lot of money or like they're doing really well and profiting. But the real truth is there are tons of people out there, guys, who have millions of followers and readers and all that, but they don't actually know how to turn that into something fruitful and profitable and good. And so that's just in terms of business, but think about that in terms of ministry or anything else that you're doing. Because sometimes what we have is a ministry business combination, right? That's kind of what some of this online business stuff is. And so how can we actually progress? You know, popularity is kind of like this elusive thing sometimes. You know, it's kind of like, I guess the best way to say it is, you know, it looks like an awesome shell, but if there's not any like meat on the inside, and even if there is a meat on the inside, you can have all this popularity, you can be the most inspiring person, but there's a difference between having a following and making an influence and having people that are loyal to what you're doing and that care. So your progress, though it may be somewhat slow, is almost more valuable than this elusive idea of popularity, because that can go away at any point. And it almost doesn't, popularity doesn't equal profit, popularity doesn't equal purpose, popularity doesn't equal success. But sometimes we like to do that because when a lot of people know about something, it just must be successful. But that's not.
Yeah, totally. Well, so the only thing I was going to say is I was reading Elise's comment a little bit ago. She said, how do you deal with the discouragement of not feeling appreciated? She has a YouTube channel. She puts in a ton of effort in editing, but she has slow growth. On the other hand, someone else who just started has like 100 times more views and subscribers than she does. And Elise, I totally get that. And that is so discouraging. And really, that's like the comparison bit of this. That's when we look to our left or our right and say, like, why is she growing more than I am? And like, we feel like we want to quit. You know, we feel like there's not room for us, like we're not making an impact, like it's not progressing. But I did something that I think has like, I swear the Lord dropped this into my mind because it has been so helpful to me and so good for my heart that I could not have come up with it. When I was getting started writing, I decided that if I could make one person's life better, if I could point one person toward Jesus, if I could help one person know that they're valuable and that they're loved and that they matter, then really my job would be done. Really, that I just decided if I could do that for one person's life. And if we think about it, like that is so true. If making an impact on one person's life, like, I mean, like Jordan was talking about earlier with like exponential ministry, that like when we invest in one person, they invest in one person. That's how the church is spread for, you know, thousands of years. But really, if one person, if I could have one person say like, I know Jesus better because of Stephanie, I would be totally satisfied. And on some days I feel like, no, I want a gazillion, you know, whatever. But really when I come back to it, I always come back to that. Like if I can just, one person can say, I just know him better because of her. Like her sharing her story with me just helped me get through a hard time. Like one person's life is better, then I really am satisfied. And so that's really helped me along the way. And so when I think of like progress over popularity, that's something we were talking about is there are totally people that have way more Instagram followers than me. And on some days, like when my heart's not in a good spot, that could bug me. But then I get an email from a girl that's like, hey, I picked up a copy of your book, The Lipstick Gospel, and I walked away from Jesus, but I decided to walk back. And I'm like, on the floor in tears, like sobbing because God is so good and because that's progress. And it's amazing. And the fact that God allows us to be part of something like that, if we're just encouraging one person, like that is progress. And the beauty of that is that progress can happen when we have one person reading our blog. It does not need 100,000, 100 bazillion thousand to make progress. And so for me, that is always something that I focus on is the progress over the popularity. And again, on bad days, I totally flip those and it's so unsatisfying that way. Because that's always something I think of as like one person. And like, if that's the case, like my job's been done for years and getting to think about it that way, that it's like, I'm not striving, like I'm done. Like God, this is the purpose you had for me and I'm done. And the rest is just like sprinkles, you know?
Yeah. And I love that. And I think, you know, the popularity thing, it's never enough. Like it never is. You know, it's just like the more toys you get when you're a kid. It's like that one was really exciting for a while and it's really cool. Like it's always really exciting to feel like my followers are growing and my audience is growing. But we don't live for an audience. Like we have the freedom from not living for an audience, yet we like trap ourselves back in that. So what we're really doing is putting a chain on ourselves going, you have better perform well and you better do well so that you have an audience. But God's like, no, like I freed you from having an audience. Like this is not, you know, like it's not about how well you perform. And so, you know, popularity is almost like it is elusive because it ultimately is never going to be enough. And so what is enough? Well, little bits of progress and seeing in life that was impacted. I've gone to events and done events and I get, you know, feedback, little cards where not like the cheesy thing that's like, did you accept Jesus today? But like the actual, like, how are you walking away differently? personally. That means you accepted Jesus, praise God. But like ultimately, what are you taking away from this differently? And I have this little stack that I keep on my desk, because when I start getting obsessed with the numbers, or if people are responding to something that I've done, or if I'm doing something well, or if I'm not doing something well, those are the things I read through, because I look at that and I go, you know what? Yeah, my job has been done. Like, does that mean I just throw all my chips in and be like, okay, gonna go hang out on an island now? Like, no, there's always still more work to be done. But ultimately, the very first purpose and the core of why we do what we do is accomplished. And so now everything is like God just pouring on the blessings. And so when a couple followers go away, or our popularity doesn't seem as cool, or whatever it might be, it's like that's irrelevant anyway, and it always has been. So that's just something that we have to continue coming back to, regardless of what we do. And then, we talk a lot about that, and I want to get into the how. How can we shift our mentality? Because I'd be lying if I never obsessed over popularity, and just like Stephanie shared, she wouldn't either. So if it's one of those things where we find ourselves doing it, even though I know progress is more important than popularity still matters. Just like who mentioned that down here? Elise, or how you talked about, I'm working so hard on this YouTube channel, but these other people have so much more. It makes me want to stop. How can we shift our perspective to make it still worth it? Right? So there's these three kind of P's that we talked about. The parable of the talents, and Stephanie's going to explain that just a little bit more. Partnership with God, and understanding this isn't just like our endeavor and we're out on a cliff trying to do this, but we actually work in partnership with God. And honestly, the power of prayer, I know it sounds so cheesy and it's such a Christian blanket answer, but it's not, because it's actually a very powerful thing if we can actually discipline ourselves enough to harness the power of prayer through, like Steph said, I had to get my heart right. And that's something that we do have to do, is these heart checks and get our hearts right. So, Steph, do you want to share a little bit about the parable of the talents, and then we'll talk a little bit more about partnership?
Yeah, totally. So I was just reading it again. And so in the beginning, this is just I kind of already explained it a little bit, but I want to just read this first line. So it's Matthew 25:14, and it says, again, it'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. And I think that that's really what I think of when my heart, it's almost this fear that God has sort of instilled in me. And I know that fear is never from the Lord, but I think a healthy fear, or I think that there are a couple different kinds of fear, but I think that there is a fear of the Lord that is good. And in that way, I have a total fear of the Lord in that it says entrusted his property to them. And so I think about that all the time. The women who are in my community, God has entrusted them to me, but they are his girls. And I just know that if I'm not faithful with them, it's not that God's you messed up, you're out. I mean, God, one, has so much patience and grace for us, and can use all of our terrible attempts. He really can. But I always think one, I want to be walking in a way where I'm worth following. I want, if my girls were to really live life the way that I do, will they get closer to Jesus? Is my path, is the path that I'm walking worth following? And if it's not, then I have some work to do. And I think about that, if I'm a shepherd and I'm leading God's flock, I need to be really intentional about leading them to a good place, and really intentional about being faithful and being trustworthy with what he's entrusted to me. And so really, so the rest of the parable talks about, the guy who invested the talents and who made more because of it. And really, I think that when we think about numbers, it's God, you've given me webinars and resources and mentors and classes and blog posts about how to do this better and voice lessons and guitar lessons and whatever. And I've made the most of them to take what you've given me, the 5 you've given me, and turn it into 10 and turn it into 100. I've invested and used wisely what you've given me. But I'm very aware of the fact that it's yours. And so I need to be darn sure that I'm being faithful and being trustworthy with what you've given me. And so for me, when I get a little scared, when I can feel in my heart, and it's conviction, it's whoa, I've made this about me, or whoa, I'm talking about, living a godly life, but I keep looking through my Instagram to see if more people are following me. I'm going, whoa, God, these are not my girls, these are your girls. And this is a privilege to be entrusted, like to have them entrusted to me. And I want to be really faithful, and I want to lead in a place, I want to lead in a way where I'm worth following, and where like they'll get to the place that they want to go. If they follow me, they'll get closer to you if they follow me. And I want to be like really careful to invest in what you've given me and to like make more of it. And really to keep in mind, like, this is yours. So those are like, it is really like not a fear as in like, I'm scared of God's like punishment, but I just am aware of the fact that he's given me something that's not mine. And I want to be really faithful with it.
Yeah. And that's kind of the authenticity piece coming right back into play, right? That's one of those 5 things that everybody needs and wants, whether they even know they need it. Right. And so I think the gospel is not a concept. It's like the most authentic, real thing ever. And so if we are living lives that are authentic, people will know that. Like, people will know if you're a phony. Now, they might not pick up on it right away, but like, that's so convicting. Like, kind of like what you said, it's this: God has entrusted us with a camera and clients. God has entrusted us with a musical talent and a skill and ears to listen, whether that's 2 ears or 2 million ears, right? And God has entrusted us with the word and being a mouthpiece. And so if we don't utilize those gifts well, and be aware of when we choose not to, or when we've fallen short, because we're going to fall short, then as long as we have this radar of like, okay, God, that's kind of where the partnership thing comes in. It's understanding I am not just walking at this as, this little individual island trying to like gather all my people and, hope I have enough coconuts for them. But it's actually like, I'm in partnership with God, and he is continually, restocking me and refilling me and bringing the right people to join the circle. Will I be able to answer everyone perfectly? No. Will I have the right answers for everyone? Absolutely not. There's definitely certain things I am not qualified or able to speak into, and I am very okay with that. And that has to be where we're okay. And there's times where I'm not going to get back to everyone. There's times where I'm going to have to steward my tiny corner of the universe too, because my life isn't lived online. Right? I have dishes to do, and I have a husband to serve, and I have like other yucky hurt stuff that sometimes I don't really care to do, like laundry, right? And so they're like being faithful in that and investing still in that is incredibly difficult, but it's understanding that God has given us girls to invest in or people to invest in, but also like Jesus knew when to retreat. He knew when to go and be alone with the Father. He knew when his proper responsibilities were. So partnering with God and investing, but like with the parable of the talents, but also partnering with God and understanding I have to do a lot of regular check-ins because my heart gets all wigged out a lot. Like, I get so obsessed with what everyone else is doing and what I'm struggling with that, I struggle and I compare and I fall short, and then I want to quit, and then I delete all my accounts, right? Like, I've done that. And so, it's understanding if I'm in partnership with God, I can't mess it up. I can make mistakes along the way. I can fail to answer an email or 2 along the way. I can fail to meet that girl's need like I would have liked to, because I might not be the person God's going to use to really meet her need. And like, I can't meet everyone's need. Like, God wants to do the saving, not me. He just uses us as a vessel. And I kind of say it this way. Do we look at ourselves as a tool in Jesus or in God's belt, or do we look at God as a tool in our belt? Because I think sometimes we like to turn him into, it's so true. I think sometimes we like to turn him into this, yeah, I use God to like inspire people, and that's so ugly and gross, but that's like almost the human condition, because we know like God is all powerful and like people are inspired by that, and it's important, so we might as well like throw him in there sometimes, But if we're really being authentic and bringing in truth and being authentic, that doesn't mean we have to speak scripture all the time, right? Like, we want to share truth, but it has to be in the unique voice God's given us. And understanding that his word reigns is important, but understanding that we are ultimately a tool in his belt. And so partnership with God is not us using God, it's God using us. And so then that leads into prayer. That means we have to be consistently kind of going, okay, God, I need you to help me get my heart right again, because I'm obsessed with this popularity thing, or I'm finding discouragement because this isn't working, or maybe I'm so discouraged I need to take a break so that I can reset my heart. And that is very okay. I'm giving myself 4 months off this year because I know that I'm like a hamster wheel right now. And God's challenged me. It's like there's all these opportunities that I'm saying, no. Because ultimately I need to be in consistent prayer, and I need to be living the life that I'm going to go preach about or share about, right? I'm not a preacher, but it is true. Practice what you preach. And so if I'm telling girls, hey, it's okay to rest, then heck, I need to be resting, right? And that means I need to be in prayer. And I don't rest that much, to be honest. And so, understanding the importance of investment, right? It's kind of like a business deal with God, but like in a really cool, like spiritual, heavenly way, because no business or no work or no project is ever going to succeed if you're not investing wisely, right? You're not putting your money where your mouth is, and you're not putting the right effort into things. And then also partnering. You have to partner with he who knows what the heck he's doing when you don't, and understand that even though you make mistakes, he is faithful through this. And lastly, continuing to pray and meet with him and check in with him and doing heart checks and saying, okay, you know what, I need to take a break because I'm not really getting a clear vision here, or I need to persist through this, right? It's gaining that clarity, and sometimes that won't come right away, but that's okay.
Abby, I've liked what you said. Well, no, I totally relate to what you said. She said she finds herself looking at her Instagram account for photography to see how many likes she's gotten. And then she has to take a step back and realize that it's not about her. And like, I totally get that. And really, I think that through my partnership with God and through prayer, like God has really helped me create some boundaries and really given me some wisdom on like what's good for my heart and what's not. And so like one example is that I have started not checking my Instagram after work hours. And so at 5:30 or whatever, I sometimes even put my phone on airplane mode. So I don't talk to like anybody, but unless I need to talk to my mom, then I'll like take it off. But I mean, I will discipline myself to not check Instagram. And a lot of times I don't check it on weekends. And then I also heard someone one time say, create before you consume. And so when we're like sitting on Instagram, like looking to see what we like, who's liked us and what everyone else is doing and stuff, that like, really, what are we on there to do? We're there to share something inspirational. We're not there to watch how it does, that part's not our job. Like that's up to God. And so I think that like really in my partnership with God, God has really steered me in some ways to know that, who I need to be following and who I don't need to be following. And, when I can check Instagram and when I should really just steer clear of it for a while. And things like that have really been good to keep my heart in a good place. But it's really hard. It's really hard.
It's hard. And it's crazy. Like 10 years ago, people didn't have this Instagram problem. Like it's an actual like vice now, I feel like. And I think sometimes we look at addiction as being just, drugs and alcohol and things like that. But addiction can even be the attention that we're getting. Addiction, we can be addicted to attention. And like you said, like Matt and Matt's my husband, for those of you who don't know, we've had to talk about boundaries and talk about, okay, what are work hours, and so, we're on a different time zone, but after 9 p.m. my time, like we watch movies, we like do silly things. We dance around the kitchen, we cultivate a relationship. And that's 9 o'clock is because that's when he gets home. He trains like all day long. And so when he gets home, it's kind of like, okay, my workday is over. Now my workday has a big gap in the middle because he's home for lunch. And so it kind of gets shifted, but it's understanding what works. So just being intentional with that in prayer. And I think that's all I was going to say. And then lastly, we just want to kind of summarize because I feel like we've just like word vomited like a lot of you guys. So ultimately what we're trying to get at here is through progress, right? And as we wrap this up, the 3 main points are to keep pressing on faithfully, understanding that it's okay to retreat, evolve with intention, be willing to check in with God, realign your heart with God. And, as you are pressing on faithfully, remember your small beginnings, understand that, it's not going to blow up overnight. I don't care how many advertisements you see on Facebook to like get rich fast or, grow your blog overnight. Like it's just not going to happen. And that's unrealistic. And that's also very unintentional. If you want to grow your blog overnight, then you have the wrong mentality. Because then it's almost like I want to be noticed instead of I want to be intentional. Right. And so it's hard because we want to have immediate success. We all want to have overnight success, but then it's not true success because it's not stewarded well. It's not cultivated well. It's not planned out well. And it's not thought through well. And so press on faithfully through those small beginnings, treat them, meaning your readers, but also, and those people that God has entrusted you to, whether that's, your customers or whatever, but also, those that come across your path, those that you work with, and also the Lord, gold, because that's ultimately how we glorify God is when we treat others well. That doesn't mean you have to respond to every email. That doesn't mean you have to be on all the time. It means that you are loving as well as you possibly can in the capacity that you have and that you keep showing up, right? And when you're involving with intention, that is the partnership, that is working alongside God. And lastly, that progress over popularity, like write that down, put it on your mirror, like write it across your forehead. I don't care. Whatever you have to do to understand that small progresses and small victories and seeing that one person's life was changed. When someone walked up to me and said, hey, I was an atheist a year ago, and because of what you've done, my life has been changed and I now walk with the Lord, like that is enough, right? Just like Stephanie said. And so understanding that there is, like, you can celebrate those little progresses. Now that might not be your story. They might just say, hey, I never thought I would have family photos that like I could display from, I never thought I could afford it, but you made it worth it, and now I have these friends, whatever that is. understanding that that is progress and that is beautiful, and celebrate that and pray against that discouragement. Guard your heart, cover your work in prayer, cover your dreams in prayer, and understand that God's promise is so much more lasting and fruitful than popularity's promise, because popularities will make a lot of promises to you, but ultimately, like, it's not going to deliver on its promises. It simply cannot deliver. It's never going to be enough. But God's promise that he will be with us, that he is faithful, that he is working, and ultimately this is him using us, it's never going to fail, right? So that's kind of why progress over popularity is important. It's because progress and progressing in a godly way is clinging to God's promise and not pursuing popularity's promise, because that's just not going to deliver. So here's kind of the bottom line, just to write these down if you want. You don't have to. But I heard this in a sermon the other day at church, and it just like struck me so well. It says, if all you're worried about is outdoing someone else, doing as well as someone else, or reaching a certain level of success, or you're so overly obsessed with your goal, your progress is going to be slow, even slower. Like, progress is slow as it is for the most part. Every once in a while, you'll have like a peak and it'll rise really fast and you think you're really cool. And then you kind of have like a humbling reality gut check kind of thing. But progress will be slow. And so it's going to be even slower. And honestly, it might not be slower, like, I guess literally, but it's going to feel slower because you're checking and you're obsessing and you're looking to your right and your left, and it's going to feel so much more just discouraged, and so, or discouraging. And so if you are instead focusing on creativity and how to try new things with your personal work, focus on uniqueness, obedience, and trial and error for true progress to occur, because that progress is going to be so much more fulfilling to you when your true creative just work is out there and your true creative progress is starting to build, regardless of how big that effort gets, right? So keep taking those big, scary, kind of unrealistic, quote unquote steps in the direction that he gives, because when we recklessly trust God, right, that is realistic, because then he can do so much more with your 3 people that read your blog. He can multiply that so much better and so much bigger than you could have ever done if you had started with 100,000 people that read your blog, right? So, or that listened to your music, or that, wanted you to take their picture or whatever. And so it's so key to understand that if you're just faithful with a little, right, he's going to multiply that. He'll give him your 5 loaves and 2 fish, or is it 5 fish and 2 loaves? No, 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's what it is. And watch, because and you have a part to play. This is a partnership, but understand, if you're focusing on creativity, and you're focusing on stepping into that unique role he's given you, that is going to be so much more powerful than just looking out at what everyone else is doing, because then you lose the joy of those many successes along the way and those many progresses along the way. So that's all we have for you guys. Steph, do you want to say anything? I know this has kind of gone long, but I love hanging out with you guys. I don't even think like the majority of people figured out how to get in or joined, but we'll definitely send this to everybody. It's just awesome. I just love that we get to do this. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I get emails a lot from girls who are asking about like how to start a blog or if they should. And I always just say like, yes, absolutely. Because no matter what the venue is, if you're a musician or if you're a photographer, if you're a blogger, if you're in college ministry or middle school ministry, or if you're just a friend, like there's nothing more powerful than telling the story of what God's done on our hearts. Because when we share that, like, we're showing what God's capable of when we say yes. And I was at IF Gathering this weekend, and I feel like they kept just hammering this home that you don't need a theology degree. You don't need, if you have one and that's your thing, that's amazing. But like, you don't need a theology degree. You don't need to be perfect or totally professional or anything. Like, God will use you if you share your story. And if one person's life is changed, like, that's totally enough, because you never know who that's going to impact. The people who I was with my best friend this weekend, and she was one of the 2 friends. It's Kelsey, if you've read the Lipstick Gospel. But so Kelsey was with me, and we were talking about how when she told me about Jesus, she had no idea how many women I would get to tell about Jesus. She just had no idea. And so she was just being a good friend and just sharing with me. And she had no idea how far I was going to get to spread that. And I have no idea how far the girls who I get to tell will get to spread that. And so I just think, like, tell your story, tell how good God is and what he's done in your life. Do the thing he's called you to do. And it's scary. It's scary probably every day. And so if you feel afraid, like, that is entirely normal. Welcome to the club. but you can do this. And I absolutely believe that God will use you to change one person's life, if not a million. So I'm so grateful you guys had me. Come hang out with me, and I'd love to get to know you better. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'd love it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. You guys are all awesome. Thanks for sticking with us when we couldn't figure out all our tech stuff. You guys are great. All right, guys. Have a great night. Love you. And yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye.